they convinced you that suffering is normal, that working yourself to death for the bare minimum is just how life works, that asking for more makes you a communist, a troublemaker, a dreamer who doesn't understand reality. And the terrifying part? It worked on hundreds of millions of people, across dozens of countries on different continents, speaking different languages, with different flags, but the same script. Welcome to the Third World Trap. Let's start with a number. According to the International Labor Organization, more than half of all workers on Earth are wage earners. Their labor income is not just their main source of income, it is often their only one. And yet, in developing countries, working-age individuals are employed in formal wage work only 20 to 50% of the time. Think about that, half the time or less, and they're still poor. That's not laziness, that's a system designed to keep the floor exactly where it is. But here's where it gets interesting. It's not just economics that keeps people down, it's the story they're told about themselves. Take Brazil, a country with more than 200 million people, enormous natural resources, and one of the largest economies in the world, and yet a significant portion of its population has been convinced of something extraordinary, that the problem is the people themselves. A common narrative floating through social media, comment sections, and dinner tables across the country goes something like this: Brazil is full of ignorant people. The average worker is passive. Complaining about basic rights means you're a crazy communist. The smart move is just to extract value from the masses and move on. This is not just cynicism, this is an ideology, and it's been exported. You'll hear the same story in the Philippines, in Colombia, in Nigeria, in Pakistan, in Indonesia. The details change, the conclusion stays the same. The poor deserve to be poor, and the people who figured that out are the clever ones. But where does this narrative come from? Who benefits from it? Researchers who study political dynamics in developing nations have found something striking. Corruption, political instability, and weak governance are among the strongest drivers of poverty in these countries, not the laziness of the population, not their intelligence, not their culture, the system. And yet the system rarely points at itself. Instead, it points at the people. This is one of the oldest tricks in political history. If you can convince the poor that their poverty is their own fault, you never have to change the structure that creates it. You never have to answer for the corporate tax breaks, the wage suppression, the informal labor markets that function precisely because they have no protections. In country after country, political propaganda has successfully framed any demand for basic rights as radical or extreme. The worker who asks for a living wage becomes a threat. The citizen who demands public services becomes an enemy of the economy. And the average person starts policing each other. Let's talk about the corporate machine for a moment. Globalization promised the developing world a deal. Open your markets and prosperity will follow. What actually followed was something more complicated. Companies from wealthy nations found they could outsource production to countries with low wages, minimal safety regulations, and governments too weak or too corrupt to push back. As workers migrated from rural areas to cities chasing employment, competition for those jobs drove wages even lower. In China, average weekly working hours for corporate workers climbed past 48 hours and kept climbing. Researchers studying migrant labor found that over 70% of those workers were in industries so physically intensive and schedule flexible that overwork became structurally inevitable. In Bangladesh, garment workers producing clothes for global fashion brands earned wages so low that the term poverty wage barely covers it. When the Rana Plaza building collapsed in 2013, killing over 1,000 workers, the world watched for about a week, then it kept buying the clothes. In India and the Philippines and sub-Saharan Africa, the story repeats. And here is what the propaganda machine does with all of this. It tells you that this is just how capitalism works, that if you're smart enough, you can escape, that the people who stay stuck simply didn't work hard enough, didn't want it badly enough, weren't clever enough to play the game. There is a particular cruelty in this message, because it contains just enough truth to be believable. Yes, some individuals do escape. Yes, some countries do develop. There are examples, real examples, of places that climbed out. South Korea in the post-war era, Singapore, Taiwan, parts of Malaysia. But when you look at what those places actually did, it wasn't that their populations worked harder than Brazilians or Nigerians or Colombians. It was that their political and economic institutions made different choices. Choices about investment, about education, about protecting workers, about limiting the power of a small elite to capture all the gains. Political scientists have noted this directly. South Korea and the Philippines had nearly identical per capita incomes in the early 1960s. 60 years later, South Korea is a developed nation. The Philippines is still classified as developing. The difference was not the people, it was the institutions, the governance, the choices made at the top. So why don't people rise up? Why don't they demand those different choices? This is where the propaganda completes its work. In Brazil, one commenter described it clearly. The moment you complain about the basics, you get labeled a crazy communist. Political propaganda has been so pervasive that demanding what workers in Portugal or Germany take for granted is treated as dangerous radicalism. The same pattern appears in Mexico and India and Egypt. The language changes, the dynamic is identical. You have been convinced that you are asking for too much. You have been convinced that suffering is the price of not being naive. You have been convinced that the people who accept the least and complain the least are somehow the realistic ones, the wise ones, while those who demand dignity are idealists who don't understand how the world works. But here is what understanding how the world works actually looks like. The workers who built the welfare states of Western Europe were told the same thing, that they were naive, that they were radicals, that demanding weekends and sick days and pensions was fantasy. They demanded it anyway. There is a phrase that keeps coming up in these conversations across the developing world. The corporate hell is normal. Work yourself to exhaustion for the minimum of the minimum. That's just life. This is not a natural conclusion people arrive at on their own. It is the result of decades of specific, intentional messaging from media, from political parties, from corporations, sometimes from governments. Researchers studying political repression have found that authoritarian and semi-authoritarian states in the developing world have historically used political suppression as a tool to control real wages, keep people afraid of organizing, keep them fighting each other, keep the floor low. And in places where outright repression is no longer possible, then the same result is achieved through culture. Convince people that asking for more is shameful. Convince them that their neighbors who accept less are tougher, more realistic, better adapted. Convince the worker that the boss who extracts his maximum value while paying him minimum wages is simply more intelligent. Make the victim admire the predator. Now here is the part that the cynics in these comment sections always miss. They see the masses and feel contempt. They congratulate themselves for being clever enough to see through the illusion. But here's the thing about a country where the majority is kept poor, exhausted, and distracted by political theater. It is not just bad for the majority. It produces a society with low productivity, high crime, crumbling infrastructure, and shrinking domestic markets. The business owner who celebrates a passive, underpaid workforce is building on sand, because the same system that keeps wages low keeps consumers broke. The same propaganda that stops workers from organizing stops citizens from building durable institutions. The same corruption that lets the wealthy extract value today guarantees instability tomorrow. Some estimates suggest that in countries with high inequality and weak governance, the projections for the next decade include not just continued poverty, but accelerating poverty, not a stable underclass to exploit, a collapsing foundation. The trap is not just for the poor, it catches everyone eventually. The question then is not whether change is possible. History is full of examples of countries that broke out of this exact dynamic. The question is what it actually takes. And the honest answer is not a single election or a single hero or a viral comment on the internet. It is what it has always been: enough people in enough places deciding together that the minimum of the minimum is not acceptable, that working yourself into the ground for wages that can't cover the basics is not a personal failure, that demanding the basics is not communism, it is just dignity. The comment sections of the developing world are full of smart people who have correctly diagnosed the disease and then concluded that the patient deserves it. But diagnosis is not the same as wisdom. The smart move has never been to extract value from the wreckage and feel superior about it. The smart move is to refuse the frame entirely, to stop measuring success by how much you can squeeze from a broken system, and start asking what it would take to fix it. That conversation is harder, it's slower. It doesn't go viral as easily as cynicism does, but it's the only one that actually leads somewhere. If this video made you think, there's a good chance the next one will too. We cover the systems, the histories, and the dynamics that shape life for billions of people who rarely see themselves reflected in mainstream media. Hit subscribe, leave a comment, tell someone who needs to hear this, because the first step out of the trap is knowing you're in one.